How do you feel about drifting in racing games? Personally, I love drifting games. Whenever I play through a Gran Turismo game, drifting is pretty much my favorite game to play. I love being able to just drift and play for points. It's casual yet requires some skills, and you don't have to worry about a million other cars slamming into you while you're trying to do your careful turns. Well, the newest driving game for the Nintendo Switch that's going to release here in a few days is all about drifting, and more drifting. Originally released on mobile and PC, and sporting almost 40 cars for a measly price of $4.99, here is my review of Drift Legends for the Nintendo Switch. This is advertised as a drifting-based simulation driving game, though I personally would put it more in the arcade style than the simulation, which I'll explain later. Regardless of which of those two you think it is, the basics of gameplay is that every race and every event has you driving a car around a raceway, drifting around corners to gain points towards goals. If you're familiar with the drift races from Gran Turismo, it feels like that, but the entire game. When you first boot up the game, you got about 5 different game modes you can go through, 3 of which involve driving. Those are practice mode, where you can practice and just drive around for fun with any of your cars. Career mode, where you earn a lot of money by doing car-specific events. And daily events that have career mode like races, but often give more unique rewards. Outside of driving, you've got car selection, where you can go and buy new cars, and car tuning, where you can customize the paint color and the rim style for your cars. But despite the fact that it says car tuning, none of the actual tuning options actually affects car performance. It's just cosmetic. Before going on, let's talk about what's missing here. The mobile and PC versions of Drift Legends had a Ghost Race-based online multiplayer mode that was cross-platform between Android, iOS, and Steam. Due to some problems that developers had with the Nintendo servers, the online multiplayer feature is not in the Switch version. When I asked about this prior to this review, the developer told me they hope to bring the online multiplayer in a future patch but could not make guarantees. The other major change is the removal of in-app purchases for in-game currency and a significant reduction in car price in an attempt to reduce the mobile version's grindy nature. So when you're progressing through this game, what are you going to be doing? Career mode, and career mode. Cars cost a lot of money, and you only have one from the get-go, so you're going to have to start diving into career mode events to afford new cars. And this really works out nicely at first because all of the different events in career mode are specific to certain types of cars. Obviously, you can't jump into a USA event in an R34 Nissan Skyline. You've got to use money from previous races to buy an American car to use in the American event. And then again when you unlock the next event for 4-wheel drive cars, or German cars, or Italian cars, or luxury cars. And this whole race, spend money on a new car for a new event, go through the new event and earn money, buy more cars process, keeps going through all 3 career mode campaigns. And thanks to the removal of the in-app purchases and lowering of the car prices, it isn't very grindy at first. When you're going through the beginner league, you can probably buy a car every couple races. But when you get to the normal league, even the lowered prices don't stop the game from being grindy. That 2 to 3 races easily turns into 5 to 8, 10 to 12 races for a single event. Do that event and suddenly you have to grind for another 10 to 12 races. And it keeps getting worse the higher you get in career mode. Granted, it is significantly, infinitely less grindy than the mobile version, but it's still very grindy. But let's get away from that and talk about the driving itself. This is a $4.99 racing game with 40 cars and a bunch of tracks. How does it feel to drive these cars around? It feels a little weird. It is very easy to drift in this game, and it almost feels a little too easy. This game has a lot of recognizable cars, from the Skyline R34 to the Toyota GT86, and a lot of these cars don't feel very accurate. You're going to get a lot of situations where you're driving a car that should be really easy to drift and find it very tight and very difficult to drift. Meanwhile, you've got another car that shouldn't be able to drift easily that almost instantly drifts at the slightest touch of the steering wheel. Granted, the balance of the game does make it easy to drift with most cars, giving you a lot of casual fun and casual drift point gain, but for being labeled as a driving simulator, it doesn't feel like it simulates that accurately. Still, it's a fun little casual drifting game with a lot of content. As I said earlier, this game is only $5, and for that $5, you get over 30 cars, a good dozen racetracks, and almost 3 dozen driving events. This will net you at least 5 to 8 hours out of this game, not counting all of the grinding you'll have to do for the top tier career events. Now let's talk controls for a second, because I have an issue with the controls. That issue being, you can't change the controls, and the control setup is very strange. As you can see on screen, the only way you can drive is by using the X button for acceleration, the B button for the brakes, the A button for the E-brake, and the left analog stick for steering. This is awkward because of the way acceleration and the brakes are set up. With both of the brakes being B and A, it's easy for you to go straight from acceleration to the E-brake, but very difficult to go from acceleration to the normal brake. While it's true that the D-pad also has these functions in the same location, it's just as difficult to go from using the left analog stick for steering to braking with the D-pad. It would be a lot easier if you could just remap the button controls or switch it over to gyro controls like the mobile version can. Now let's get into presentation. The Switch version doesn't look bad, but it doesn't look as smooth as the other versions either. When you look at it on PC, all of the cars are really smooth around the edges, but on Switch there are occasional jagged edges. It's not a really big deal, but it's something noticeable. As far as performance is concerned, I didn't notice any frame drops during actual driving gameplay, but the menus are pretty laggy. There were a lot of occasions where I would try to go into a specific mode and the game would just kind of freeze for a few seconds before actually moving and loading that menu. It never crashed on me, but it's very laggy at times. Now let's go into battery life, which is one of the game's more positive features. Drift Legends has a battery range of 3 hours and 23 minutes on high settings, up to 4 hours and 29 minutes on low settings. In other words, you're going to get a lot done on one charge. Now, in conclusion, Drift Legends is a pretty fun arcadey drifting game that's kind of disguising itself as a simulation game. However, the missing content, repetitive nature of the game, and technical problems make this the weakest version of this game. Reviews to Go rates Drift Legends for the Nintendo Switch a 5.5 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below or head to the website at reviewstogo.com. Before I go, guys, I just want to do a quick thank you to all of the people who are donating to me on Patreon. So anybody interested, head on over to patreon.com/reviewstogo and help us along to the first goal, which will result in all ads removed from this channel. Thanks again for watching the review. Have a good day.